Welcome to the Evolution Revolution podcast. I'm Mark Johnston. In this podcast, we explore journeys of resilience, reinvention, and finding the warrior within. In this episode, Matt Shapira, very talented and successful cinematographer in the Los Angeles film industry, world traveler who falls in love with the journey of elephants and decides to bring their story to the world through art. Let's hear a story. And I have the great pleasure of welcoming a brother, a friend, a colleague, Matt Shapira, to the episode today. Matt, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
Of course, I know you've got, thank you, and a beautiful Mother Nature background behind you, which is very appropriate. Matt Shapira, it's really difficult to sum up in a few words who you are in the world, what you've achieved, and where your passions are, but I'm going to give it my very best shot because you also journey in the world of production and media, film, established filmmaker as well, with a real passion in your heart for wildlife and making sure that people have an understanding of the beautiful beings we journey with in this world and the importance of the focus and the intent on living in a better space so that we might all live in a cohabitated, beautiful environment, Matt. So I'm curious, as I always start every episode, I have to ask at this time of your evolution, Matt Shapira, what is your message to the world?
First off, that was a beautiful intro, and thank you. And to answer your question, firstly, it's an honor to be associated with you and your journey. Thanks for having me as part of your journey. The message I would convey is as simple as this. If you give love, you'll receive it in abundance without even trying.
Beautiful, Matt. Absolutely beautiful, clear, and full of heart, which is so you. And as we'd like to journey in these episodes, Matt, I like to go back to early days of young Matt Shapira and then explore how you got to where you are today and the beautiful achievements and impact you've had in the world. Deeply touching. I've seen some remarkable content that you have out there in the world already. I'd like to be able to share that with the audience in terms of how we can find more of your content out there. But let's go back to the very beginning, Matt, because there's many things that you've explored and done in this world in your journey. Where did young Matt Shapira grow up?
I was raised in Southern California. I have two beautiful parents, both very present during my childhood, and two sisters. I grew up in Calabasas, particularly near Malibu, for those who aren't familiar with Calabasas. And then I spent a lot of time traveling with my family, which I think their message to me as a kid was to make sure that you see the world through the eyes of the local and not as the individual coming through with a bias. So I think it enabled me and gave me the opportunity to explore anthropologically people. And I fell in love with that. And I think that defines part of my curiosity even today, and more so probably today as I've gotten older.
Beautiful, Matt. Beautiful.
Yeah, I was going to say, to answer that question, my dad is from Canada, and I think I could speak for the company I'm in. There's something about Canadians. They're very kind. So I had a very kind father who I think instilled upon me kindness first.
Beautiful. What wise words, and one that you carry with you every day of your journey. I know that. I've had the great pleasure of meeting your father, David Shapira, one of the best in the business in terms of talent representation, agency work in Hollywood. And of course, we have a very wonderful mutual friend in the actress and human potential advocate, Lindsay Wagner, which is originally how we met, Matt. Yeah. Delighted and grateful to both your dad and to Lindsay for that.
Likewise.
There's an instant connection, I think, when we first met in LA. And I think some of that is the fact that in this industry, which can be very cutthroat and very challenging, very tumultuous, that there are some people in our business, Matt, that walk with an open heart. It absolutely came very evident to me that you were one of those people and one of those brothers. And I'd love to just give our audience a little bit of a sense of your trajectory in the world. You obviously became very fond of storytelling at an early age and have developed that. I'd like to just share with the audience a little bit about the type of work that you've done and where we can see your work.
Yeah, to start off with the first point, I grew up in Hollywood. Very fortunate to experience that. When I was growing up, my dad, who to this day still owns the agency that he had and has. So I was surrounded by some very brilliant minds, some very talented people, shapeshifters, cultural creators. And as a boy, you can't help but to pick up some of those elements from them. Advice, good and bad, qualities that are good and bad. So I grew up in LA and I grew up in Hollywood, and the entertainment industry. And as a result of that, I was really fortunate. I feel blessed, almost given a gift that you didn't ask for, but you were aware to receive if you were present with it. And so I
Mm.
met some amazing talent. And as that shaped me, I was more of an athlete, more focused on hockey, being the Canadian sport. But as I got through high school, I started painting with my mom. She is a brilliant artist and a emotionally very self-aware person. Her art was very curious and beautiful. A lot of Jamaicans and Caribbean locations, and I got familiar with the brushstroke of that color palette. And then I took that curiosity and through high school and then ultimately into college when sports were no longer really part of my daily agenda, I found myself doing art as a meditation, a way to eliminate thought. I was asked once by someone watching me do a mural, and they said, "What do you think about when you paint?" And I said, "That's the curious thing. I think it's the only thing that I do that I stop thinking altogether." And I think
Eh,
that's part of the journey we all try to find if we're spiritual or if we're capable of that process of finding the universe in us, whether it's God or spirituality. And I think when you channel or eliminate thought, you have the universe communicate through a form that comes in various expression, be it writing, music, dancing, could be anything for anyone. For me, it's painting. And so I started painting. And the way in which I started was through art history and studying the greats from back in the beginning in the Roman Empire before that, and all the way through to my favorite era, which is the post-impressionists. So with that, I
mm.
studied the post-impressionist brushstroke and became obsessed with walking the path of those in France, in the South, in the North, in the center, learning the different color palette between the Dutch, the Spanish, the English. And what that did for me is it gave me a sort of an introduction to Hemingway, which seems like an odd
Yes.
correlation, but because of the literature, I was able to not only see through the perspective of the artist painter, but also through the artist of the writer. And then that became a natural progression for me to become hyper focused. Um,
Mm.
and then one day, probably in my mid 20s, a buddy of mine, a guy I worked with, said, "You should show some of your art." And I said, "Nah, that's not really what I want to do." And probably did, but was shy. I had remembered someone saying something to me. I think it's poetic now because I think it would help maybe the audience in their own journey if there's someone who hears this and wants to have their own expression and not feel
Mm.
fearful of it. A friend of mine said, "You should be careful of showing your art." I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Because people will know how you feel. You don't want to show people how you feel." And it's sad because he was sharing with me a trauma, I think, or a trigger in himself that he loosely defined as a characteristic of society. And I think for me, I took that as a challenge. I took that as an opportunity to speak towards the opposite. And so immediately after his suggestion, I started sharing my art. And I felt what it did was the most interesting thing of all. I started getting a huge following um, because people started asking me how I felt the way I felt and made them feel safe to share with me how they felt. So art
Beautiful.
became this connective device that translates beyond words. And it really furthered my confidence as a human with a message.
And that message, Matt, obviously some great information there for our audience to absorb and take in your journey and your awareness. I would say, as an artist, you connect with people in a very beautiful way. And I think part of it for me, seeing some of your remarkable art, Matt, is the fact that you do walk with an open heart. And when you are traveling, you connect with people locally and you're genuinely, authentically interested in them, their journey, their life, their struggles, their joys. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that you've woven some conservation elements into your work because clearly elephants have been a joy for you to not only connect with and walk with, but to create as beautiful pieces of art. What is it about the elephant that has spoken to you, Matt?
That's a great question. Mm. I think it's a little bit of a combination of things. It goes back to my original point about the universe speaking to you. I have a lot of very interesting, very fast thinking, highly qualified, talented friends. And there's always a
Mhm.
moment in their life where they hit a plateau or they've reached their goal. And I always
Yes.
say, which it's always important to know you got to be careful what you ask for because if you end up getting it, you got to be prepared
Mm.
for it. And then what happens once you've
Right.
received it? What happens if you've accomplished that tragedy of Sisyphus when you've made it to the top? You no longer have to push the rock. And so there's these
Hmm.
moments in life where you have to reevaluate. So to that end, I think I'm a big believer in manifestation. the law of different attractions. And I believe that I learned that from a colleague, actually a mentor when I was in hockey camp in Canada, a guy that had his own journey. So I was 13 when he taught me that. And it stuck with me. I say that because to your question, I think one day during a transitional period where I was questioning my path, I
Mhm.
remember someone said to me, I said something about my job, and someone said, "You're not supposed to enjoy it. It's a job." And I
Mm.
thought, that's a curious thing to hear. And I got to be
Mhm.
careful who I surround myself with, because if that's the logic this person has and they're in my daily agenda or life, then this is the mindset I'm going
Mm.
to share. And so you hear this thing about you're like the 5 people you hang out with the most. So I started
Mm.
reevaluating my approach to people. And what I noticed is there's two types of creatives in my mind. There's the ones that are absolutely driven to do it, and the ones that really wish to do it but have a lot of fear. And so they hold it back.
Mm.
So I started
Yes.
pursuing the idea of manifesting, which is the original point of the guy in Canada, and visualizing myself. And then from there, I did a lot of deep meditation, Buddhist, different types of mantras. Those didn't really particularly work for me because my mind
Mm.
raced and I was not able to really channel. So I just kept going back to painting as a way to relax. And
Mhm.
in one meditation, binaural beats, which is something I like, an elephant came to me, walked up to me in this vision, and it looked me straight in the eyes with this trunk. It grabbed my face, very gentle being, and it just looked at me. And I don't know if you're a big believer in this, and obviously there's a phrase about the eyes are the gateway to the soul, but this elephant
Mhm.
just absolutely downloaded media into my brain. The universe
Wow.
somehow conveyed to me one message, which is stop trying, just exist. Just give and accept. And so I was like unaware of what that meant because of my maturity and evolution, which is the overarching concept. I didn't know what that meant. I wanted to process it. So I decided for the first time out of my life to paint an elephant. I painted that elephant and it was like this old, really sage guy, wrinkly and had some hairs poking out. And I was excited about it. It was very black and white. It didn't take very long. It was this explosion of thought. And I posted it on social media, wondering if it was received or would be received. And about 15 minutes after I posted it, someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to buy that." And I said,
Wow.
"Whoa, what?" I'm a Van Gogh fan. He didn't sell a painting in his whole life. So here I am. I paint an elephant and someone wants to buy it. And I'm thinking, I'm not
Mm.
going to sell it. It means so much to me. And I said to the guy, sorry, not going to do it. And he said, "Name your price.
Mhm.
Name your price." And I was like, "Whoa, come on. No, seriously. I want to be an artist and I've been manifesting this. So maybe I should name my price." I named my
Yeah.
price. I thought it was offensive. And he said, "I'll buy it. I'll bring it over cash." And I said, "Whoa, before you buy it, I just have a question. I want to
Mhm.
know why you want to buy it.
Mm.
Why?" And he said something. I'm a DJ. I have an office. I have trouble with my emotions. And this elephant makes me feel things I can't explain. And I didn't paint it for him. I painted it because I had feelings. And so the fact that I was blessed to be able to have some universe provide me this feeling and to convey it with my hands in a way that someone else felt it made me recognize that this was a message and I had to do something with this message. So the elephant came to me and helped me when I was in a place of transition. Ironically, the Ganesha Indian deity is about new beginning, remover of obstacles. So
Yeah.
I saw this whole unbelievable explosion of universe information hitting me. And I stopped and I processed. And then after a few months of this level of painting and successful selling of art, I started meeting people in the conservation community. And again, I was not sure why. I didn't know much about the process of the flight of an elephant, whether it's in India or Asia or Africa. But what happened was I started meeting these wonderful leaders in the communities of conservation, these very impressive, powerful people. And they started sharing with me their stories. And I felt like this was my second message. And that was for me to be a voice, not just for them, but for the elephant itself. And so
Beautiful.
I took that as a calling. And so I started working in conservation to convey messages without hitting people over the head. I just
Mhm.
paint it with love and compassion and let them feel if they want to discuss it or if I can sway them into an understanding of how to be mindful, then
Yes.
that would be my approach.
Brilliant, Matt. What a beautiful depth and layering of how you got to where you got to today, and the fact that you are a messenger clearly as an artist. I think that is one of the most beautiful things an artist can offer to the world is a message of some kind that touches our soul, that changes us, that inspires us. And one of the most beautiful things you've shared with me is the idea around really enlightening people that haven't had the experience of connecting with an elephant, this remarkable beast that has such a gentle beauty and yet is such a massive presence at the
Sure.
same time. So you've met, I would think, countless elephants at this point and other wildlife in your journey.
Yeah. First off, thank you for the nice words. Yeah, I've been to a couple sanctuaries in Thailand and painted murals. I do a lot of murals. I haven't done one in a while just because of my film stuff. But I've done
Yes.
murals in all over Africa, India, all over Asia, a lot of the United States and different countries and even islands. But I
Mhm.
have been fortunate to meet a lot of rescued elephants, and not just the elephants, but the mahouts that take care of them. Sit in congregation
Yes.
with a lot of the conservation and the people that have championed the greatest minds and the greatest people of the elephant community, but not just the elephant community. They represent conservation for the environment that they're in. So whether it could be in India and it's the dancing bear situation, or whether it's horses or donkeys in India, I'm sorry, Nepal, I've met a lot of
Mhm.
beautiful sentient beings. With the elephants, there was one elephant, the matriarch, the oldest one in Chiang Mai, that actually came to me from a woman named Lek, who owns the most sanctuaries in Thailand, and she's very prominently recognized for this. She walked with her elephant, and the elephant sat and watched me paint what was a 90-foot mural at the entranceway of their sanctuary. And I have this amazing photo of Lek painting with me the tail while this elephant is sitting there watching or standing there watching. And you think to yourself, I don't know if that's something I could ever have predicted, but here again, manifest. Just dream it.
Mhm.
Dream the wildest dream and then let go of fear and see what comes
Mhm.
of it.
Beautiful. Matt, those of us that haven't had the opportunity perhaps to travel to Nepal and whatnot, I have to ask a more practical question from your lens, which is what would you recommend to those that are just somewhere across the states or anywhere in the world, but isn't accessing the kind of travel that some have had the pleasure and the privilege to do in the world? Gratefully, some of us do some good with that. But just your average Joe, your average Jane, Kansas City, anywhere else that you might recommend, is there any way to explore this
Mhm.
without getting on an airplane and traveling halfway around the world?
Yeah. Firstly, I wish we could talk for hours because this is such a lovely time. I do have a mural in Kansas City from a movie I did. You can always go there if you're in Kansas City and see it. I'm in Chattanooga. I'm filming a TV series here. I'm very grateful because of the elements in the show. It's very family oriented, very inspired, really beautiful, and so I'm very grateful. But when I got the job, this isn't my second time in Tennessee, and each time I take my dogs and I get in the car and I drive
Mhm.
cross country and I camp, and people go, "You're crazy." I said, "Am I? I'm swimming in waterfalls and rivers, and I'm enjoying nature and seeing America." And people say it's hard for me to do that. And I said, yeah, it is. So when I was getting food the other day, I met a 17-year-old girl who was giving me my order of food. And somehow conversation happened. And she said she wants to travel, but she's got fear. And I
Mm.
said to her, let me give you a piece of advice. I said, fear is something that we all have. It just gets chipped away. You chip away at it. Each experience, you have to embrace fear because it's your instinct to protect you. I
Mm.
remember going on a boat crossing from Botswana to, ooh, what was that country? No, it was Zambia to Botswana. And I was carrying equipment, a bag of art supplies, and I was about to go to Kafue National Park. And I was painting a mural, and it was huge and beautiful at a school for all the rangers' kids and all the kids that have nothing. And I'm on
Yes.
a boat, and I'm scared because what could happen to me? There's a number of things. Aside from disease, I could be hurt. I could fall in the water. I could be lost, and no one will hear from me again. There have been numbers
Right.
and numbers of times where I put myself in exhilarating places. And I'll use a quote. I worked with a guy when I was an early filmmaker. He was an adventure climber, and he did things like climb Everest and Annapurna. And I asked him, I said, why do you do it? Aren't you afraid of death? And this is
Mhm.
extreme. He said, I feel most alive when I'm at the risk of it. Now, that's not what I'm doing, but I appreciate his
Right.
adventure. For me, I think that if you see yourself in a place that you're afraid, then that's a good
Mhm.
challenge. Be practical, but make that attempt. Do it. Because in the end, as I've read many quotes, don't have regrets when you hit your older ages. But get to this, do it now. Do it.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. All you have to do is, again, look at fear in the face and say, I see you. I hear you.
Mhm.
Going anywhere.
Beautiful. Recognizing, witnessing is often a word that's used in those moments, Matt. Deeply inspired. When it comes to making a change in the world, too, you've had great opportunities, my understanding, whether it's at an auction, whether it's making a difference in a small village somewhere remote, and you're connecting with these people. Do you think we have an obligation as humans to make a difference in the world?
I was just watching a documentary by a filmmaker, Tom Shadyac. I don't know if you've heard of that documentary. And I really love his story because he's such a successful, brilliant artist and only one I could strive to replicate in my own journey. But yet he pulled himself aside from that and he had to reevaluate himself and put perspective on what the purpose is. And I think in the end, to your exact question, I think it's a moral obligation as an individual to work on yourself. And I
Mhm.
think it's a conscious effort daily to find joy and happiness despite the inner workings of our brain and how we contemplate. And I think if you
Mhm.
bring that thought process to yourself and then you externalize that and you're mindful of you can't change people, you could just change how you approach them and how you approach yourself in that situation. I think if you go through
Yes.
life looking to give compassion and love and acceptance, which is hard, I
Mhm.
find that it begins the journey of our purpose as existing humans. I think we forget that through education, through life, through hardship, through circumstance. And again, to your full point, I have never seen an animal more clearly that than an elephant. And that's partly why I love the symbol of it, because it does represent absolute family and maternal instinct. And they're humble, they're huge, as you call them, massive beasts, but they walk on their tiptoes when they notice things and they hum with their trunks in a way that is a vibration only the universe understands, but yet universally we could resonate with. So I think it is our
Yes.
obligation if we're channeling our truth being the artist, way more qualified than me, but loved. If you operate with
Oh,
love, we exist in our purpose.
beautifully said. Amazing sound bites throughout this interview, Matt. Thank you so much for this. When it comes to the fear that does exist in the world right now, you talked about fear a few moments ago. There are many people feeling depressed, anxious, all sorts of adjectives we could place where the world is in a certain state. And I think people like you, Matt Shapira, offer a light and an inspiration and a hope. What would your advice be to those that are struggling today? Because we know, having come through everything we've come through as a planet in recent years, there's a lot of tension in the world. There's a lot of short fuses. There's a lot of internal anxiety and externally displayed. What's your advice for those struggling at these times we're in?
Oh man, that's such a great question. And I hope that I can offer something at the minimum that would give anyone just a tiny bit of light, as you put it. A breath work, stillness,
Yeah.
awareness. I think find your creative expression, find what you feel. And if you find yourself overflowing with this negative anxiety, which is what society provides a lot,
Mhm.
reevaluate your environment, reevaluate your approach to information. It's going to exist. And through history, it's always going to exist. All the way from the book of Machiavelli's The Prince, there's a struggle for man to survive, there's a struggle for a woman to exist. And I think we have to find the greater understanding of our individual reason for being here, as opposed to the
Yes.
collective understanding of society. I am absolutely a big believer in doing the moral obligation of society, but I also believe in the
Yes.
individual idea of your obligation, which is to be happy, to be successful in your attempt to wake up and just make a difference. Turn to the grocery clerk when they're bagging your stuff and say, "Hey, how are you today?" Go to the cashier at
Mhm.
Starbucks and say, "Hey, thank you for this coffee." I gave a tip to a woman
Mhm.
who gave me a haircut the other day, and I think the haircut in here was like $20, and I gave her a $20 tip. And she only did a couple
Mhm.
hairs. And she's like, "That was really nice of you." And I said, "But you told me you drive an hour each way. At least I can cover your gas." And the reality is
Love
I
that.
made her day, and yeah, it was a little extra money, but you know what?
Mm.
Maybe she'll treat her son a little better that day. Maybe she'll get her coffee and it'll taste a little better. So go out of your
Mm.
way to make people smile. But first, make yourself smile.
Beautiful, Matt. And just recently, I took in a Jays game. Sadly, here in the Toronto area, we lost to Miami rather bigly, I would say. But after leaving the stadium, cab drivers really working hard to amp up the cost just to go a few blocks, and you can tell there's that energy of taking advantage. By the third cab driver acknowledged that his other colleagues in the industry were doing this. We obviously chose to take a ride with him. And when he dropped us off at a fair price, I gave him a $50 tip because you think this person needs to know that's being noticed. This
Right.
person needs to know that their genuine, kind nature is recognized and celebrated. And I think there are ways for us to do that, man. Absolutely. I'd love to know a little bit about what you're up to these days and what can we look forward from Matt Shapira in the next little while.
I was just thinking about something that kind of is a nice transition, but also pulls back a little bit. I did a movie a couple of years ago in Tennessee, which I think people would probably appreciate. I think it's one of the nice movies to watch, and I've had a lot of positive comments. It's called Nothing is Impossible, and I shot it in Knoxville. It's about a guy with a second chance, a talented
Mhm.
athlete who didn't make it, was the school janitor at a high school with an opportunity to audition for a local team to be a professional basketball player. And the reason why I bring it up is because it's a good segue. It's about not too late. It's never too late. It's about second chances at love, passion, purpose. And the story is about his struggle, his inner struggle, his external struggle, the level of commitment he has to face against the adversity, both socially and in his personal journey. And I think that for me, when they asked me to direct that, I was flattered. And I think the reason why I chose to leave agenting when I was in my early 30s and learn how to be an editor and a cinematographer and is I didn't want to just be a painter. I wanted to be a full-fledged messenger sharer. And in that
Mm,
regard, I found moving pictures to be like still pictures, but maybe a little easier to convey. And I can capture the audience for 90 minutes. I,
yeah.
I just finished a movie. It's an action movie. I shot in LA and Miami. I'm currently shooting
Mhm.
a TV series here for Great American Channel. It's a great story about a girl with a calling to be an EMT and the struggle she has to face through her parents who doubt her own doubts, her relationship with herself. I was flattered. I'm
Mm,
doing 3 episodes. It'll air in January. Um,
beautiful.
I think as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, I love to share the same theme, which is I don't think I would say this to hurt my dad, but I would say that
Yeah.
someone asked me the other day, a woman at the coffee shop, she goes, what do you say is your greatest achievement? And I said, my greatest achievement is understanding and stepping out of the shadows of my dad's greatest fears, which are inculcated
Mm,
by default to parent me.
mhm,
So the
mhm,
fear that we talk about, the anxiety we talk about is protection to do the right thing. I chose a path.
mm.
This path, I've been validated with opportunity and I've been validated by conversations and folks and friends like you who relate. And that is the intention is to help people understand that they have their purpose and they should find it. And those are my films and in my art.
Matt, beautifully stared, and it's inspiring just the thought of all you've achieved and many places in the world that you've been and made a difference. I'd like to end with this, Matt, because you have such a vision and an appreciation for life in the world, and that we all really need to get along and find our own passion for the little ones, for the youngsters, the kids in the world today with all that's been going on. What's your hope for the next generation, Matt?
My hope for the next generation is a compassion to be present, to recognize your environment and put priority towards things that have real, true meaning. Um, to understand the difference between depth and shallow, jump into the abyss of curiosity, leap into fear with an understanding of cautious optimism, and find your voice. And if someone doubts it, use that as fuel to further it.
Beautiful, Matt. Find your voice will live as a highlight from this particular episode of the Evolution Revolution. Matt Shapira, I can't thank you enough, brother. You're one of the kindest, most creative, inspiring people I've had the pleasure to journey with in my own walk in this world. So I appreciate your time. I wish you the best of luck down in Chattanooga, and please continue to do great things. I look forward to seeing you soon.
It was wonderful to be with you, and it's nice to see you. And thank you for having me and sharing some time. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll do this again, Matt. I'm sure. Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this episode.